you can get dopamine, which we've talked a lot about in previous episodes through building in exercise and joy and finding hobbies but it's just important to understand. And sex, yes, intimacy, orgasms, that's right.
We can't forget that.
No, it's an important one. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that gets produced in your brain in response to excitement or something that you're looking forward to. It's also considered the addiction neurotransmitter. Like if you are trying to get more of it, or more pleasure in your life, you might get addicted to either an activity like gambling or alcohol or drugs, because it feels really good to have high dopamine. You feel calm, relaxed, and excited. It's like a joy reward chemical. So with that, we often feel very creative and focused as well, that neurotransmitter. And what women don't know is that it is very connected to estrogen. So when you are mid-cycle and ovulating as a woman, you produce lots of estrogen, and then the complementary dopamine also gets produced
naturally.
Naturally.
Aside from like just the addictions of all the external stuff that you mentioned, we want to actually add in that dopamine is naturally produced by the body as well. And you're saying that it ties up with estrogen, so it gets heightened around the ovulation time. Hence, in our previous episodes, we've even talked about, gosh, that's a great time to be more social and do more creative things, and because it's just naturally more prevalent, and we just feel better at that time of day, part of the cycle.
Yes, that part of the cycle. And then through the menstrual cycle, as ovulating, menstruating women, we always make a little bit of estrogen. We're either on a lower end of it, or we're building up for more, which means that when you transition through different times of your life, for example, you've just had a baby, suddenly you're breastfeeding and your dopamine and estrogen are down because estrogen is being suppressed. Like your brain is saying, hey, don't make another baby right now. You need to raise this baby, and you're breastfeeding, and that stops ovulation, that connection. So while you're pregnant, your estrogen levels are really high with progesterone, and the complementary dopamine is also really high. So that's why a lot of women, it's not the only reason, but why a lot of women will report feeling really calm and relaxed and happy and glowing in pregnancy, but then feel suddenly, I think it's 70% of women will experience postpartum depression, sadness, the blues, the more severe depression, less than that. But, many of us will feel that postpartum change in mood, and will cry at the drop of a hat and feel sad. It's often because of that hormonal connection. So if you tested your blood hormones, you would see low estrogen. There's no test to check your dopamine, but you can assume that there would be a change. It's not the only way that your brain manufactures dopamine through estrogen. There's other mechanisms. Naturally, you can get dopamine, which we've talked a lot about in previous episodes through building in exercise and joy and finding hobbies but it's just important to understand. And sex, yes, intimacy, orgasms, that's right.
We can't forget that.
No, it's an important one. So just recognizing that the change in estrogen, whether you're postpartum or perimenopause, will impact your dopamine levels. So if you're suddenly in your 40s and trying to build a family still, or you're done that, you've completed that stage of your life, perhaps you decide not to have babies. Either way, you are having these sudden mood changes, and it could be condensed to just before your period, but it could also be, in a phase where perhaps the period's not showing up. So you're in a spot where you've had like a 60-day, pause in ovulation and menstruation, and you're wondering why, not just am I experiencing perhaps hot flashes and night sweats, but why am I feeling sad and crying all the time? Or just a really low mood, or angry. Yeah. And it's because of the change in those hormones that impact the brain's chemistry. So I think that it's important to note that even though there's this shift in estrogen and we make way less estrogen, almost, well, there's a big drastic change through menopause. It's not like our dopamine goes away forever, and that we're not going to be happy in postmenopause if we don't use estrogen. It doesn't work that way. But if you're having a really hard time and you're one of those women perhaps who's more susceptible to postpartum depression, anxiety, or another phase in your life where you've had depression, anxiety, and it seems connected to your hormones or not, you may be more susceptible to the perimenopausal mood changes. It's also possible the other way around. You've never experienced that before, and suddenly you are for the first time anxious, depressed, or raging. And it's just really important to understand why this is happening, where it's coming from, because naming it is helpful because you then don't feel like you're nutty.
Okay, so then what do we do?
If you're one of those women who has experienced this before, perhaps you're right in the middle of it and you're postpartum and you're feeling this hormonal shift, you're sad, you're crying all the time, there are solutions. You can use herbal medicine to help you sleep better. Of course, you're being woken up by your cute little baby and you are feeling super tired, and that is a big reason as well. So your estrogen has dropped, your dopamine is low, you're being woken up all night. So trying to make sure that the quality of the sleep that you're getting is improved. Some safe naturopathic supplements to consider would be, 5-HTP, theanine, magnesium. Speak to your naturopathic doctor about these. In some patients, I have even recommended St. John's wort, which is a stronger herbal medicine, if they're really experiencing quite moderate to severe depression and they're avoiding or they're wanting to avoid conventional antidepressants, because they can be very effective. So when you're breastfeeding, it's different compared to when you are pregnant. There's less risk with the baby being impacted by medications or supplements, but still important to talk to your healthcare provider. And you want to get to a place where you can eventually recover enough postpartum so that you can involve more exercise, because that's a natural dopamine booster. And then making sure that you're eating protein, because tryptophan, which is another it's a precursor to serotonin, another neurotransmitter that impacts your mood. It's also varying with your menstrual cycle. And then, your progesterone's also missing in action, which is basically, it influences the GABA in our brain, which makes us feel calm and relaxed. So eventually when your periods come back, you have the nice hormonal fluctuations, which will make you feel more relaxed. But on the other hand, you may feel it, if you don't address it earlier, it might become a little bit intense in the PMS time, especially when you're tired raising your baby. So making sure to really protect your sleep, getting exercise in there, and then protein, eating protein, which is high in tryptophan. So turkey and dairy products, if you're not sensitive, and certain nuts and seeds are high in tryptophan. So you can feel calmer and relaxed. And yeah.
Yeah, and I would say regularly as well, just because I find that new moms, they can forget to eat because you're just so overwhelmed and it's difficult to even go pee. So have some snacks by the bed or by everywhere so that it's just a quick go-to so that you don't starve yourself. And then, otherwise it can totally affect your mood, amongst other things. And in Chinese medicine, we talk about, postpartum, we're in a very depleted state. Right? You've had the baby. It's the most energy consuming activity a woman will have gone through. So how do we replenish? So really good quality, easy, digestible foods, which includes at this point, not just what you eat, but how you have it, which includes warm foods. This is a time where you definitely want warm foods. So you don't have to overexpend energy to warm up whatever cold food you like, which requires energy consumption. So warm foods, warm drinks like bone broth is always a great one because it also helps to replenish the blood and the essence.
And if you are not breastfeeding, you can also make the lactation bites that are made from oats. We'll include the recipe in the show notes. Even if even if you're not breastfeeding, I just want to qualify, because some women are forgetting, like they're feeding their babies either through breast milk or formula, and just because they are not breastfeeding doesn't mean that they wouldn't benefit from the nutritious foods that we recommend for breastfeeding women, right? So, like, I think it's important to, like, a lot of women, they think, oh, okay, I'm not breastfeeding, so I can just eat whatever. But it's all postpartum women could benefit from the nutritious healing foods, if that makes sense. Because, like, we'll often recommend like extra nutritious, like lactation bites and cookies and soups and stews to make sure you're able to produce enough breast milk. But it's not just for the breastfeeding mom. We need moms healthy and in sound mind so they can, be able to take care of their babies.
So what is that called again? Lactation bites?
Yeah, they have different names,
Okay.
lactation cookies,
All right.
lactation bites.
So
But yeah.
then let's make it super duper easy for you guys. If you want that recipe, just DM us at Alive Holistic Health Clinic and just say, yes, I want the recipe, or I want the, what is it? Lactation bites? What did okay. And
Lactation cookies, lactation bites, but they can be for all postpartum women.
So just
and
DM
they're
us
helpful nutritious for dopamine, and so not just for healthy breast milk production.
Perfect. So DM us and then provide us your email, and then we'll send you an actual recipe for that. So that'll be the quickest and most easy way for you to get this.
Little snack bites that are going to keep your energy going. And then in terms of the perimenopausal period, some top tips to consider would be to taking more pauses. If you're feeling like you're on an emotional roller coaster, your hormones are swinging, and so are your neurotransmitters. And so you need to pause more, make sure you carve out time for exercise, protect your sleep as well. And then there are those same kind of supplements I was mentioning for a postpartum woman may be beneficial as well. So, theanine and 5-HTP, which is basically 5-hydroxytryptophan if you're having difficulty sleeping. But you could also look at adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha or maca, things that kind of help you feel like you can adapt to the stress of these hormonal swings. There's a big change in our testosterone as well. So, 50% of our testosterone drops in our 40s compared to when we're in our 20s. So if you can help promote that hormone, then you can have a better balance, like a symphony in your brain as you are transitioning through this phase. And that's why I like maca for and ashwagandha for this phase of the life. So things to consider would, I guess, the top tips really are just looking at nutrition, exercise, and sleep, and then some top vitamins and herbs.
And of course, we can't forget about acupuncture, because acupuncture can help to regulate the hormones, helps to regulate this menstrual cycle, even as you go through transition, so that you can feel better, you have more balanced in moods. And now, that all said, just so you guys know, it's not like a complete magic, right? It can be, but like, just know that maybe the mood swings aren't as high and low, like the roller coaster ride gets smaller, because we are human, we do feel. So it may just not get as heightened. And so isn't that going to be helpful no matter what? And I'll tell you, when you said about, oh gosh, like when you're postpartum, like you could cry at a drop of a hat. Well, I don't think that phase has ever left me. And I'm post-menopause. Like, I'm just more emotionally in tune, I would think.
So for women who are really impacted post-menopause and it's paralyzing them, like maybe you're like jumping into feeling like more wise and in tune and like totally comfortable with that. For some people, it's paralyzing, and estrogen replacement therapy can make such a big difference. And whether or not it's like for a transitional time or instead of or in addition to antidepressants, we just want to make sure that you have an easier time. And it is quite magical to see the difference for women who are really impacted, especially the women who are having hot flushes and night sweats, and they're crying at the drop of the hat and they can't get through their day. It's quite outstanding. So estrogen can really impact the drop in estrogen. Eventually, as you're saying, kind of phases out. This transition will eventually get balanced, right? So our body adapts to that changed estrogen. So eventually our body will adapt to the changing estrogen from a brain chemistry perspective, but not in all people. And some people some women are more negatively impacted by the transition. So definitely estrogen replacement in those scenarios. Genital urinary syndrome of menopause, which we talked about in another episode, that does not necessarily go away, but it's important to note that there's just so much variability in this, and understanding ourselves is powerful.
Yeah, so again, this is not meant as medical advice. So really what you need to do is DM us, contact us, get an appointment. We'll chat with you, go through it with you so that you have some hand holding so that you can thrive no matter what season of life you're in. So that is DMing us at Alive Holistic Health Clinic.